Tom's incapable of not being part of everything he ever started out being part of, and this was delivered to me today, and it's to John Erickson, personal and confidential, and it says, if you don't read every word, I'll know because I have people watching you. So I'm now going to retrieve the telegram, and we'll see what it says. From Palm Desert, California, USA, to John W. Erickson, part-time roast coordinator, ticket seller, and overpaid mouthpiece. Care of the distinctively built and superbly managed ballroom at the Valhalla Inn. Dear John, would you please thank Larry Hebert for covering for me as the Master of Ceremonies tonight? I understand he looks great at his felt fighting weight of 179 pounds. And I want you to tell Larry that if he forgets what he used to look like, then have a glance down at Dave Douglas. It goes on, he says, John, he said, Port Arthur, Fort William, and Thunder Bay have produced many great characters over the years. In the political arena, Charlie Cox, C.D. Howe, Walter Asif, Bill Scully. In the athletic world, Edgar Laprade, Eric Stahl, Kurt Harnett, Bill Scully. The area has also produced many great musicians, Paul Schaefer, Doug Smith, Doug Scott, Bill Scully. And it's been led by some brilliant businessmen, Norman Patterson, Bob Pretty, John Andrews, and of course the ski mogul, Bill Scully. Now I had to read every word, but I digress. You can tell the operation was a success because he's obviously sucking up to Councillor Scully for a raise as a TB-Tel director. But let us say this about that. There's only one Dinty, one Chicken King, one Water King, and lately one Wind King. One guy with his own 9-hole golf course in his backyard, and that's Thunder Bay's ultimate character and entrepreneur, Gordie Crompton. And to use Gordie's favorite word, anyways, this is a great tribute to you, Gordie. You deserve it. So sorry we could not be there with you. All the best, Tom and Shirley Jones. And for some reason, another telegram came to me just recently. It's from Loch Lomond Road, Neebing, Ontario. Sorry I could not make the roast this evening, Gordie, but unfortunately, Thursday is the only night my accordion teacher is available for my weekly lesson. Enjoy your night. Wishes, Bill Scully.
As I said earlier, Tom Jones was supposed to MC this evening, and he was not able to be here, obviously. Well, it turns out I wasn't even second choice. That was Lloyd Gilbert, but Lloyd couldn't do it because he was going out of town. And then John Erickson was asked, and he said no. And then Jody said, well, we'll get John, Brian, and you to share the MC job. So I was sort of fourth and a half choice. And then they said, no, you can do it by yourself. So I apologize in advance. I guess MC in this case might stand for mea culpa. So you're getting the fifth choice as your MC tonight. So if you want a refund, see Jody. You're welcome. And like, I was after The Undertaker. So I don't know how low they can go, but apparently at least 6 feet under. So I thought I'd try to capture the fact that others were asked and couldn't be here, and I didn't know how I might do that till actually at Gord's Halloween party. I was dressed up as a clown, and I thought, well, we got something that is common probably with these folks, and so that might be the way I can include them since they couldn't be here or didn't want to be here, I'm not sure. I don't think it's any secret that Lloyd Gilbert makes no secret about the fact that he does wear a toupee. And John the Viking Erickson and Tom Jones, have that manicured look now. John was overheard to say to Tom, although John tells it the other way, at the recent PA Union, that, gee, all these folks have aged, you and I haven't. So I've kind of tried to capture, I guess, the color of their hair, and that's before they get to their stylists, of course. And then John Bryan, in his job at Everest, has to make corpses look good, so has to style their hair. So I thought I would wear my clown outfit here. So it's sort of the rugged John Erickson look. And the uncombed Lloyd Gilbert look. And the get ready to go on the ground look from John Bryan. And I apologize, Tom, I know we're on video for you, so I couldn't capture your color. Didn't have any Grecian. But I thought that might be the best way I could represent all these folks here tonight, since I was the fifth choice behind The Undertaker. But I thank you for the applause earlier about my weight loss. A lot of you, some of you here, Jim Johnson being one of them, I know Mo Semenuk's here, and my wife and others really encouraged me to get this operation done. I had actually it's my 9th month anniversary today. I had operation February 10th. Thank you. And I've lost a lot of weight, 151 pounds as of tonight. And it's allowed me to lose my gut so that I got reacquainted with an old friend. Where are your minds? In fact, I found out I had two of them, a left foot and a right foot. Oh, you're thinking of that old friend. Yeah, well... Don't have to worry too much about that one. There's so many drugs around today. Actually, it reminds me of my favorite commercial on TV, which is Cialis. And I'm saying this, and I know there's two young people here at least, and a couple other young people, but it's on TV as a commercial, and it talks about if you require, any 4-hour erection requires medical attention. Now, I'm not going to do a survey of hands here. I won't embarrass anybody. But lady, if you ever had a 4-hour erection, I don't think you'd be calling for medical help. And I knew you gentlemen that as long as you had enough blood left in the rest of your body, you'd be crawling into work the next day to either around the sassy water cooler or at coffee break brag about your erection. So I'm not sure that's truth in advertising. Anyway.
Again, I'm not sure why I was invited here. I know they phoned the mayor again, and this time she said she's not going to be anywhere near Crompton because 20-odd years ago, when she was a newlywed, she saved up her tip money for weeks, and she ordered a bucket of chicken from Dinty's on Cumberland. And it arrived, and she had the whole family there, and she was just so proud of this big family dinner. And she spread it out on the table, and then she phoned Crompton, and she says, "What the heck is going on here? There's 19 wings and only 2 legs." And Crompton, he tried to explain to her that these are rare chickens, and they're bred to fly. And that she was just getting the product that was delivered to him. Well, she didn't buy that then, and she's not buying it now. And she hopes that people are cruel to you tonight, Gordy, because she doesn't like you, actually. And as you know, when the mayor turns it down, they start going through the councillors and see who would take the job on. And I outshone this guy here because I came 13th. And just to show you where I do rank here, John, your John here, the Easter Seals John, surrounds himself with beautiful women. I get Larry Hebert and what's it say, Crompton there. When Jody phoned me to do this thing, it was quite some time ago, and she said that Tom Jones would be there, and well, Tom and I have done, I guess over the last 25 years, maybe 50 of these functions. And we work as a team, and we play off each other. And so when I knew Tom would be here, I accepted it. I don't have anything in favor of Crompton, actually, but I enjoy working with Tom. And so Tom and I, well, we sat down for the last couple of months and really worked out a great routine back and forth, and the repartee was great, and our target audience, we had a sample audience in to test things on. They were all, well, you know Tom, he spares no expense. And they thought it was hilarious, and I was quite confident that I'd make it through the night without too many booze, and that's all I want in life. And then I got the news that Tom had a boo-boo and he wasn't going to show up, and he was going to go away where it's warm and let his wife comfort him. And I was stuck here with number 5 or number 6, whatever you... So our whole routine went down the pike, and I had no time to prepare a speech or anything else, and Lord knows I tried. Then I saw Larry here tonight, and I said, you know, 7 years ago I looked just like that. Believe it or not, for those of you who might remember, 8 years ago I got an invitation to our high school reunion. And like many people going to reunion, I said, well, I'm going to get in shape for this. And so I started walking around Boulevard once a day, every day at noon. Rather than have lunch, I'd go for a walk around Boulevard. And then at night, rather than have supper, I would do 32 laps at the Games Complex. And I'd laugh at his 159 pounds. I lost far more than that. I pity those who only lose 150. And I went to the reunion, and I was back down to grade 10 weight, actually. I was just, well, hardly anybody there knew me. It was great. And life was great, and then that summer, as I had for the last 25 or 30 years, coached Little League, and decided to take my team on a road trip throughout the Midwest U.S. and down through Kansas and even into Arkansas. And so I put this team together, these 11 and 12-year-old boys, and I said, you know, it's going to cost us about $60,000 to go on this trip. I'll do all the driving and that, and we'll eat watermelon a lot, and there's lots of water in the tap. So we got to go raise the money. So every night for 2 months, I'd put the 12 boys in the car, and we'd go out in the city, and we'd sell lottery tickets all over the city, from West Fort to Kern River, down Lakeshore Drive, every night for 3 hours. These kids, we never learned much about baseball, but they could all sell brushes and vacuums, and several of them are doing quite well. Anyway, one night, this little kid, Kurt, 11 years old, came up to me and he says, Coach, he says, how many houses are there in Thunder Bay? And Well, but on some note, I thought I should know this, but being a ward alderman, I only knew there were 1,714 in Current River, and I just kind of multiplied it out and said, well, there's about 42,000 homes in Thunder Bay. And he says, and we go to every one. I said, yeah, we're going to go to every house. And he says, we're going to sell 6,000 tickets. I said, yeah. And he says, 36,000 people are going to tell us no. This is an 11-year-old kid, and he says, you know, Mr. Waddington, that's a lot of rejection for a little kid. But that's the kind of kids I had, and we went on our ball trip, and we played in Duluth and Minneapolis and down into Iowa, and then we played in a place called Austin, Minnesota. And we're doing quite well, and we played a game there, our third game there, and it rained just near the end of the game, and kids home with their billets, and I trudged back to the van carrying all the gear as always, and soaking wet and heavy load. But it was all right. I was with the kids, and I enjoyed it. But I was too wet to go to a restaurant. It was supper time, so I just decided to pick up some Kentucky Fried. And this is a story I told the Heart and Stroke Foundation. And I'm just using it here tonight because I didn't have time to do another one for this. So I picked up the chicken, I brought it back to the hotel, and went in my room, and I was soaking wet. So I stripped down to my shorts, and I was sitting there watching television, eating the Kentucky Fried, and kind of drying out. And about 6:30, I was 6:30 because the news was just coming on, and I reached for a glass of milk, and it slipped from my hands. And I thought, geez, I'm a guest here, I better go clean this up. So I got up to go get a towel, and the whole left side of my body just didn't work anymore, and I fell on the floor and laid there for the next 17 hours. And I went through the alphabet. I figured, what is going on here? And angina, no, and botulism, no, and cancer, no, thank God. And I worked it down, S, and there's stroke. And I figured it out. This is what I've had, because nothing's working except one arm. And I'm reaching up with this arm trying to knock the phone to the floor, but all I'm doing is, at the beginning of the dinner, I'd laid out all my cigarettes because they got wet. And they were kind of drying on the table there, and I was reaching up, and every time I reached up, I knocked some more cigarettes on them. I was just covered in tobacco, but I couldn't find a light. So I kept drifting in and out of consciousness all night. The next morning, of course, I didn't show up for the game, and the coach there, who I'd played against many times over the years, asked the kids, well, where's your coach? And they said, well, as far as we know, he got drunk last night and he still passed out. Well, they're not kind kids. They were just... And he says, I don't think so. And he phoned the hotel, and he said, well, someone check Mr. Waddington's room, please. And so they sent a poor girl up to the room, and she came in the room. And I'd been laying there for 17 hours, so it wasn't a pretty sight. And she screamed and then phoned the ambulance, and they came. And as they were wheeling me out of the hospital, unfortunately, a local Thunder Bay reporter was there. She was down there with one of her children in another tournament, and she immediately phoned home and said, Councillor Waddington, Alderman Waddington at that time, struck by massive stroke, is on the... Well, he may not make it, ladies and gentlemen. And that newscast went out, and the girl that had run against me in the previous election had come second, and she heard this broadcast while driving down the street, and the broadcast was still ringing in the air when she pulled up to City Hall and went up to the clerk's office and demanded, how do I take over from the Mr. Waddington? True story. And the clerk said, well, Mary, first he has to die. Well, I didn't. And about 6 months later, she took over because she convinced people that Mr. Waddington would be a mercy, that he wouldn't be forced to serve anymore because his health was such. And you people bought that, and you put her in along with your chums, and not that I'm bitter, but you paid the price. Backing up, they took me to Rochester. I was lucky because Austin's only 40 miles away, and I ended up in the Mayo Clinic. They went through my wallet, found the gold card, figured I was good for a week. And so I was in there. I didn't know day from night. It was coma in and out, and oxygen tent and intensive care, the whole bit. And back home, my wife came radio broadcast, and she figured, oh, geez. And so she phoned my son, and I said, well, I guess we better go down and see if there's any money in his wallet. So they leaped in the car, and they drove down to the Rochester and arrived at 3 in the morning or so. And at that time, I was in bed, and my doctor is a doctor from Austria, Dr. Mengele, and he was his best, and he saw my wife and son come through the door, and he said, he was trying to just see how bad the brain damage was, and the MRI had shown nothing. So he said, Mr. Waddington, do you recognize these people who are coming through the door? And I thought, well, if I had made a joke of it, my wife would see that it's not that serious, and she could take that worried look off her face. So I thought it was very clever. I said, yes, Mengele, the gentleman coming in, that would be my son Kevin, and that thing with him, that would be the angel of death. Well, I thought that was hilarious. My wife, on the other hand, who hadn't slept in 24 hours and had just driven 500 miles with a crazed son, immediately walked over the bed, stood on my oxygen line, and said, yes, you're right. So I stayed in the Mayo for some time. I don't remember. It was day after day. And one of the good things about it just proves the point that the law of physics, for every action, there's an opposite and worse reaction. I stayed in the emergency in the tent, and you can't smoke in the Mayo Clinic. So they put me on the patch, and then they put an armed guard there, and sure enough, they broke my smoking habit. But unfortunately, and that was a good thing, but unfortunately, when you quit smoking, your taste buds come back. And sure enough, 10 days later, I could eat anything, and unfortunately, the only thing that was around was the Dairy Queen, and so everybody that visited me brought me a chocolate malt. And so much for the 2 years of walking around Boulevard, skipping lunch. After a week in the Mayo, or 10 days, I'd pretty well run out the gold card, and they thought it'd be really neat if they shipped me back to Thunder Bay. So they threw me in the back of a truck and drove me up here. And I ended up in St. Joe's, where I was forced to undergo therapy at the hands of a very cruel woman, one Erin Polska, I think is the name. And they had a thing there where because when you have a stroke, you lose the ability to feel and touch things, and so they would hand you this bag, this cloth bag, filled with broken glass and old razor blades and staples and things, and they'd shove your hand in there and they'd say, tell me what you're feeling in there. And this went on for hours every day, and I'd pull out this bloody stump and kind of cheat because there'd be razor blades stuck on the thumb. And there's a razor blade. And she'd say, very good, Mr. Waddington. Let's try the other hand. Oh, God. So after a month of that torture, I was released and loved those chocolate milkshakes and got right back to where I am. In fact, I gained a few. And this is going to happen to you too if you don't pay attention there, Harry. So anyway, that's my heart and stroke story. And it worked well there, and I hope you learned something from it as well. Don't lose weight because you're going to have a stroke. But actually, I'm here I was told by the mayor that despite her best wishes and wishes to the contrary, actually, I'm here to honor a fine citizen, Mr. Gordon Crompton, a man who has provided a service to the city for 40-odd years and done great charity work. I know several people that have benefited from Gordy's hands-on support. And again, I wasn't prepared to do this, so if I'll take you back a few years, I first got elected back in, I think it was 78 or 80, somewhere back then. The mayor at the time was Walter Assif. And I was just a kid then, 30-something, and younger than even Gertrude. Maybe a little more mature, but younger. And that's your Alderman, Diane. And so Walter took me off the office. He says, Richard, and I was Richard then. He says, if you're going to be in this business for a while, or you're going to be asked to appear at functions and represent the city from time to time, and he says, I've got something that might help you. He said, I prepared a kit, and I'm going to give, if you take this with you, whenever you're called upon to do something, this kit's going to save you. So I have that kit here tonight, actually. Because again, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. Jody just said, be there, and you get a free drink. And nice case. You will pay for your own drinks, apparently, though. Diane. So in this kit are various city items that gifts we actually hand out. We have a Canadian flag, Thunder Bay flag. And these we present normally to, visiting Boy Scouts, Girl Guides, people like that. Little nicer people in Gordy. So you're ineligible for that. Then we have a medal for sports activities. Kurt Howard has one. The Westport Little Leaguers got one the other night. I have one for my championships. Well, in fact, even Larry has one, I think, I forget what for, umpiring, I think. Certainly wasn't anything athletic. And Bill Scully, who you all know, certainly has one for rowing. So you're not eligible for that, Gordy. I've never seen you take an athletic breath. We have here a silver medallion, and these are given out. Well, I don't know what we do with these actually. They're pretty old. Oh, it's a centennial one, 67. We don't hand out many of those anymore. This is our #1 gift, a leather-bound History of Thunder Bay. We give to special people, Prime Minister. Understand there's one of these at the Vatican, Buckingham Palace. Far too good a gift for Gordy. Now, our latest thing, our latest scam from our city-owned telephone company is this oil change rag, I think it's called. And if you sign up for $1 million worth of phone calls over the next 6 months, you'll get one of these. Or become a director and get a free phone anyway, so. This is the famous Thunder Bay toque. You'd look good in this, Gordy, but I promised it to my wife. And last time I spoke, I might have spoke ill of my wife, and I was chastised for that when she saw the film. She's not here tonight. she doesn't particularly like Gordy, but she does like Gordy's wife, Joan, and she sends her apologies because, well, my wife, even though she's nearing retirement and will leave her employment in another 8 months or so, she's a bit of a headbanger, and you young people can explain what that is. And she's gone tonight with a bunch of her headbanging friends to the Bon Jovi concert in Minneapolis. And true story. We used to have city plates, but we don't anymore. They're a fine imported English china with gold embraced in there, but the city clerk says we can't afford to do that anymore, and so Larry Hebert was one of the last people to receive one of those when he abandoned Sunday Hydro, and a grateful nation handed him the plate. We have a city spoon and a city fork, neither of which Crompton needs. And the city mug, this is supposedly supposed to replace this plate. I think the clerk is in on some kind of business. We have these clocks. They're pretty cheap too, something from Dave Douglas, I think. And a city keychain. So nothing in here I can see that would that you're worthy of, Mr. Crompton. But I got to give you something. So if you'd come up, sir, and I have here a hard-to-get city pin, which I can't get off because of the paralyzed hand, and Aaron didn't do a good enough job getting it back in shape. But you know, the American government, the House of Representatives, have a tradition of, if you write your representative or your senator and get on a waiting list, you can get a flag that is flown over Capitol Hill in Washington. And every day they take this down and they present it to somebody. And it's a real honor. And Canada's done the same. Every day they fly a flag over the Parliament buildings, and every night they take it down, and the next day the Liberals sell it to somebody. And you picked that up pretty good for Neanderthals, but anyway. But this city pin is in the same vein. This city pin has actually been worn by a real live councillor during a real live council meeting. So it does kind of have the aura of government. And Mr. Crompton, if you'd come forward and accept that with thanks from a grateful citizenry. And I'll leave this mess to be cleaned up later. Thank you. Well, and this, by the way, for those who asked, is the best $35 ever spent. So you leave this in the front seat of your car, you can park anywhere.
Thank you, and good evening. Well, I've been asked to participate in this roast for my father. My sister thinks it should be called a fry, given our special guest this evening, but we went with roast anyway. And it's funny, you know, I can hear my mom saying same thing we'd all heard many times growing up, that if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. So I was going to ask you to join me in a moment of silence. But then I thought better of it. And I actually can't believe that my dad has agreed to this, as Edward Mayer doesn't serve Bacardi at the Valhalla. And that's the only thing my dad drinks. But you know, in fairness to my father, he's given up on the limes. He claims it's because it gives him heartburn, but we know it's really because then my mom can keep track of how many drinks he's had. But I digress. When I was asked to speak tonight, I asked my dad what remarks might be appropriate for an audience as distinguished as this. He said to me, "Don't try to sound intellectual, sophisticated, or charming like the other roasters. Just be yourself." So here goes. And this is a bit of a challenge for me because it's hard to roast someone I have always looked up to without offending him, or worse, my mother. But honestly, Dad, it's not that bad. You know, it's easy for every Dave, Dick, and Larry over here because they're probably not in the will. And I may not be either. It's all done. But I would like to share with you some memories I have of growing up with this larger-than-life character, my dad. For too many years, our father worked long hours and was rarely home. My older sister Donna refers to him as the lump in the bed. See, there was a lump in the bed when we went off to school in the morning, and then it was gone when we got home. We rarely went on family vacations, but there was this one time. We all piled into the car. The trip was to check on the Dinty stores in Atikokan and Dryden. Woohoo! That was pretty much quality time at our house. I'm the middle of 3 daughters. We always wondered what it would have been like to have had a brother. Imagine that. It would be weird because, for those of you that don't know, my father's quite a chauvinist. He really never lets any female know what he does in a day. But having 3 daughters was convenient for my dad. He often couldn't remember our names, so he would use a term of endearment, like Hilda, who coincidentally was his mother-in-law, or my personal favorite, shit for brains. And that's true. All of us worked for our father at some time. I think I started at Dinty's when I was about 8, popping boxes for the 2-for-1 specials when customers were lined up down the street. I'm sure many of you here remember that time. Well, Dad always had huge expectations of himself, and he expected the same kind of hard work and discipline from us. After all, we did get paid about a whopping 25 cents an hour, so we had to earn it. When I was in my early teens, I helped my dad cater a wedding at the Strathcona Golf Course. I was quite nervous, frantic when we ran out of gravy for the Swedish meatballs. But my dad calmly said, "That's okay. Now we have 2 kinds of meatballs, some with gravy and some without." I learned a lot that day, and that mentality has stayed with me. I try not to sweat the small stuff, although to be honest, I'm really kind of sweating right now. Well, I worked for my dad at the John Street store all through high school, right up till I got married, actually. And that was during my dad's gentleman farmer period. He bought some property on the first side road in Murillo and had a few head of beef cattle. What the hell do you know about cows? Chickens he could tell you about, but cows? I often wonder why he didn't become a chicken farmer. That would have made more sense. But then he's never done anything the conventional or the easy way. My dad's had a lot of careers. Among these are paperboy, entrepreneur, restaurateur, innkeeper, caterer, chief cook and bottle washer, auctioneer, and in the early 90s, a town crier, complete with the outfit and the bell. Perhaps you saw the picture while it was rolling on the screen. Well, that town crier outfit was kind of a fitting career for my dad because he cries about everything. Often bragging the only money he'd spent that day was the $1 he'd parted with to pick up a newspaper. One time he came home and told my mother he'd saved $20 that day. He was quite proud of himself. When she asked him how, he said, well, he'd stopped to buy her flowers. The store was out of roses, so he'd actually saved $20. I wouldn't say my dad's cheap. He's always been very generous with me. But up until a couple of years ago, he didn't even carry a cell phone. He just wore his garage door opener on his hip. He's trying not to laugh. That's standard. But of all the careers my dad has had, mechanic was not one of them. In the late 1970s, he called for a ride home. Turns out his truck had died. He cursed and he swore, but he didn't know what the problem was. Turns out that after 45,000 miles, the truck had run out of oil and the motor seized. His response was, well, there was oil in it when I bought it. In retrospect, maybe he ran out of oil because he didn't hang around the pumps long enough to get his oil checked. If the attendant had long hair and earrings, he was out of there. It freaks him out to see a guy with earrings. Many times he'll just drive away before letting someone of, let's just say, a different persuasion help him out, even if it means walking when he runs out of gas. One thing's for sure, no one can accuse my father of being open-minded. But one hot, sunny day, he gassed up the car, mother and two of my nephews out for a ride in his brand new white convertible. They cruised on up to Kekabeka for ice cream. Once they got into Sutton's driveway, my dad limped slowly and painfully into the restaurant, pulled himself up on the bar stool. After catching his breath, he ordered a sundae. The waitress looked up and said, "Crushed nuts?" He said, "No sciatica problems." I finished their ice cream treats. My mom, my dad, and the boys headed on home. Well, they live on Town Line Road, and for those of you that don't know, that meant going past Vanderweese's chicken farm. The smell of chicken manure is overwhelming. My nephew Dan's nickname is Chuck, as he has a tremendous gag reflex, and you can imagine what happened next in Dad's brand new car. Needless to say, he has never taken any of his grandchildren for ice cream since. And as he told me about what happened to his brand new car, he just stood there stammering, "Fa, fa, fa." I'm sure many of you have heard him say that. We call that a Gordyism. In our family, there are a lot of Gordyisms in our vocabulary, and dinner conversations usually go like this. "Hey, did you see, yeah, but didn't his brother live on Retan, oh my God, what's his name? No, he's dead, but the brother, no, the guy. Oh, where's the Henderson directory?" And that's true too. And the funny thing about all of that is that my sisters and I usually understand that kind of language, but our husbands have a really hard time keeping up with the conversation. Another Gordyism is, and you got to get your hands going, "Well, let me tell you a little this about that." Or, have you heard the one about the fish and the bread? But whatever you do, never ask my father for directions. He'll tell you to take the road over to the street where they built the bridge over the river, no water in it, and then turn left at the Fisteris, which is a mythical place he made up, and then go straight to get to Rattan Street. Or he might say, "Do you know where Nipigon is?" It's nowhere near there. One night he didn't even know where he was going. He'd left a local establishment late one night after having consumed what he refers to as a few Pepsis and was on his way home. Well, he never should have been driving. As he went through the intersection of Maplewood and John Street, he happened to look in the rearview mirror. He saw the red flashing light that's meant to notify all drivers of a dangerous intersection. He immediately pulled over. He waited a full 10 minutes before he realized the red flashing light was not a police cruiser. And my dad will tell you he spent 4 years taking medicine, but then his prescription ran out. And that's not very accurate either, as he brags that he's never even taken an aspirin. But you know, Dad, you really should see your physician more often, because as you're aging, you're getting wrinkled and saggy and lumpy, and that's just your left leg. I want him to see his doctor regularly before he ends up with that dreaded furniture disease. You know, that's when your chest has fallen into your drawers. And now that he's 70, he's entering the snapdragon stage of his life. Part of him is snapped and part's dragon. The funny thing is that now he's old enough to display his own birth certificate in the barn as a collectible. But you know what they say, you are what you eat, and he's no chicken. Actually, for years, I've heard many people telling me he was full of bullshit. Thanks to my dad, to be honest with all of you tonight, that was my son Rob's first word, thanks to him. To quote my good friend Tony Villeneuve over here, who has more fun than people? And my dad is living proof. One day I was standing in the parking lot of Warehouse 500 talking to him. He had his back to the street. A little old lady with a baby miniature chihuahua on a leash tapped him on the shoulder. Well, I guess she startled this great big guy, because he jumped up and went, "Holy Christ, does that thing bite?" The little old lady just stood there stammering and had no idea what to say. The funny part of all of that is that now he lives with what he refers to as his little old lady, and she has a little dog that bites. But whatever you do, always be wary of answering a ringing payphone. On the front of Sassy, there's a payphone. The Sassy boys know what's coming. As most of you know, my dad's job at Sassy is to keep the stool warm, press the no sale button, and harass the customers. I'm going to pay for that one. But one day he saw an attractive woman in high-heel boots and a short skirt walking by the store. Now remember, this is Simpson Street. So what else could he do but phone the payphone? The woman, and we'll use that term lightly, stopped. And she answered the phone, not knowing the caller could see her through the window. They engaged in an interesting conversation as she discussed what services were offered and at what cost. After a few minutes, they agreed to meet at 2 p.m. outside the dry cleaners across the street. He tells her he has dark hair and he'll be driving a blue car. Of course, as he hangs up, he's laughing. He can't wait to see if she shows up at the appointed hour. Now he can hardly contain himself, and he tells all the guys in the store what's about to happen. So now they all line up in the window, waiting to see if this woman will show. Well, just by coincidence, as 2 p.m. arrives, a blue car pulls up in front of the dry cleaners. This woman jumps in the car and shocks the hell out of the driver. The boys all witnessed a heated exchange in the car, and then the hooker jumped out of the car and slammed the door. They laughed as they watched that poor senior citizen with short dark hair drive away in a big... Naturally, the guys in the store, including my sons, now have tears running down their cheeks. They're laughing so hard. Some people can't understand why my father won't retire. But why would he with a job like that? So, Dad, I hope I haven't offended you and that I'm still in the will.
And I just thank you to Tom Jones for recognizing me as normal. Usually, Tommy starts this sort of thing, gets the ball rolling, and likes to have a great time, and then he disappears, and he's done it once again. We knew before the roast ever took place at one of our fine dinner parties that Tom would not be here. Gordy, he had no intention of being here and roasting you today. Hey, he left a long time ago, and right now we know he's hidden undercover someplace. At the same token, there's been a lot of conversation about his type of operation. I see his doctor here, at least he was here, Chris, and Chris knows as well as Tom what his problem was when he went away. But they can't talk about it because they're both Irishmen, and all they do is blow each other up when they don't like what's going on. The other part is Tom went away for a heart operation. Now, not the type of heart operation that you all know. When Tom went away to the Mayo Clinic and went through the MRI, they found out he didn't have a heart. Most of us knew that. Chris knew it, but he couldn't say anything, but he did go away, and they found out he didn't have a heart. So it was time to give Tom a heart. Very hard to do because, as you know, hearts aren't that plentiful and the body rejects a lot. But in this particular case, he had quite a few hearts. But the problem was the hearts rejected Tom. Nobody wanted to go, no heart wanted to go near Tom Jones, except near the end, where, thank heavens, they put in a Richard Simmons heart. So when Tom comes back and he's down the street and he's doing all these exercises, just call him Richard Simmons. Tom, I know you'd appreciate that. Anyways, it's difficult when you're doing the type of roast that we're doing, because we've got about 300 or 400 people out here. Tom, more than you had. Anyways, there's three or four people out here. The beautiful young daughter, of course, gave her beautiful speech, but she isn't the will and she's got to be careful. Then, of course, you've got Dick, who's running for election, and he in turn has got to be careful not to say too much. The third one, of course, is a short-ass little retailer who can't see over the lectern. Okay? But that's okay, we're here. Anyways, it is a roast for our dear friend Gordy. But out here in these 300 people that we know of, everybody has a little comment they want to say about Gordy Crompton. So I went out to these people and I talked to them. And then I thought, for my speech, I'll take the article that we always read every Saturday in the Chronicle Journal called Thumbs Up and Thumbs Down. Now, Clint, I didn't know you were here tonight, but that's a recommendation for the Chronicle Journal. We'd sing because then we'd have to clap for you. All right, so here we are. There's about 12 or 15 people who gave me all sorts of suggestions, from the family to the business and to his work people and even his coffee club. So we will go through a thumbs up and a thumbs down. Thumbs up for remembering all who helped him to be where he is today. And a thumbs down to those who didn't believe he could make it. There's some good parts in here, but there's a lot of homespun as well. Thumbs up, he loves to tell a good joke. But thumbs down, he always forgets the punchline. Thumbs up for trying to be a handyman. But thumbs down for falling off a crooked ladder and breaking his wrist. And it happened. Thumbs up, he appreciates and enjoys everything people do for him. The bad part is he has a hard time saying thank you. Thumbs up for taking the Dale Carnegie course. Good for you, Gordy. Now we're not sure what he's talking about when he says, let me tell you this about that, which happens to be one of his favorites. He does like a slice of lime in his Bacardi rum. He says the more he drinks, the less likely he is to get scurvy. According to one of his son-in-laws, he's always willing to save money. Such as, and Larry, I'm sure this before or after you left the hydro. A while ago, when Thunder Bay Hydro introduced the new formula on your monthly hydro bill, Gordy noticed that a big part of the amount was for delivery charges. So he called the Thunder Bay Hydro, and he asked him where he could pick up his own hydro to save those on delivery. He even mentioned he had his own truck. Thumbs up, he shows up for work hours ahead of everyone else. The thumbs down part is he disappears and nobody knows where in the hell he is. Thumbs up from the staff because he said he can handle 3 phone calls at once and handle a customer all at the same time and do it successfully. He's notorious for sending people on different errands to deliver, such as 312 Anywhere Street. The trouble is, it could be 2312, 3312, or 4312. He has no idea. He says, so what? They're only numbers. Find it. He knows everyone without a name. Then he expects his staff to know everybody without a name and their third cousin. And he always say, well, you know what I mean anyways. One of the greatest things about Gordy is his hearty laugh. Gordon, for your information, this is all the way from Arizona. A lot of phone calls were made on this one. One of the greatest things about Gordy is his hearty laugh. No matter where he is, he might be in a crowded room, on the golf course, or at a large picnic, but you can always find Gordy by hearing his wonderful laugh. At the same token, for thumbs down, there might be some of you who don't know one of Gordy's special talents. he can make a perfect bra linen napkin, which he often wears as he takes a little nap of a glass or two of wine and a big dinner. And these special friends say they have pictures to prove it. Gordy's Mind, this is from the Coffee Club. If any of you have ever been with the crew at Mario's, or have you ever been in a coffee club, they always play Birds in the Bush. For those of you who don't know what that is, you can ask the coffee club later. But Gordy's mind must be going. Who else would call in Birds in the Bush when Gordy was already holding 3 in his own hand? To the host and hostess with the mostess. The Air Canada National Midget Hockey Championships were held in Thunder Bay in April of 1988. Gordon Jones had agreed to billet 2 or 3 players. But due to some of the billeting problems, they actually accommodated 6 players from the Fredericton, New Brunswick Team of the Week. Then they topped off their gracious hospitality with a party at the Pine Barn for all players, coaches, parents, and chaperone of the team. Great, Gordy. That was in 1988, truly a Thunder Bay giant heart gesture before we even thought of it. Thumbs down to the designer, architect, builder, and owner, all of the same, of a golf course with half the greens situated on the side of the hill and the balanced slope to all sides with a peak in the middle. Gordy, you've always been a leader. You did such a great job in that golf course that there are 2 little Italian guys out in Papoons that try to keep up with you. Thumbs down to a fellow by the name of David Lewis and the NDP party. They lost the election because of Gordy Crompton's BS. To Gordy's political astuteness, when NDP leader David Lewis was campaigning at the Lakehead exhibition, Gordy ran out and got a wheelbarrow full of manure. I was going to say bullshit, but it didn't sound good. Went up to Lewis and said that he was spreading a lot of this around and thought he might need a refill. It truly happened, and it was on the National. Thumbs up. Gordy was happy to have found water even at his age, even though it was on his property. Now he can supply Thunder Bay with sassy water. But the thumbs down. The way Gordy found the water on his property, as the story goes. He walked out of the house with a stick in his hand. He wandered around until his stick went stiff and pointed to the ground. Gordy was happy to find water. Jones says it was not a stick, it was only a twig. But he did hire the water witcher. Thumbs up, Gordy knows how to throw a party and entertain with a large group at the barn. He said it is really a project that keeps the family off the street. He uses all the daughters, the son-in-laws, and the grandchildren to help. Plus, the labor is free. Loves that. He built the first-class golf course, and he is too thrifty even to buy a full set of clubs. He plays a whole 9 holes with a 5-wood and a putter, and beats the guy he normally goes with. Thumbs up, Gordy is extremely cautious. He continually is fishing, baiting people with little bits of information with hope that he will find out things that he probably already knows. And at his ripe old age, Gordy still cannot settle on a career. He's operated Dinty Kentucky Fried Chicken, Fitzsimmons Wholesalers, a hotel business, an auctioneer, and Sassy Water, to name a few. Plus, now the windmill project. Thumbs down, Gordy, handle that instead of politics. Here's one for the watery again. A few years ago, Gordy hit the watery. The Thunder Bay South Side had a water restriction due to the contamination at Loch Lomond. Thumbs down, word has it, Gordy has a bad back because he was last seen climbing Mount McKay, carrying beavers, dropping them into Loch Lomond so people would have to buy the water. And we'll finish this off from his position as a committee member from the Thunder Bay Airport Authority. Gordy's tenure, and thumbs up of course, became amid a flurry of controversy. An NDP, I believe it was Ian Angus, had been appointed by the Ontario Conservative government for a second term. Although the Minister of Transportation had already given official notice to the appointment to the chair of the authority, connections were used within the Tory party to have the minister reverse that decision, and guess who was appointed as the new member? Thumbs down, Gordy Coup de Grace took place at the official meeting at which the newly appointed Ontario Liberal government appointee was also present. Gordon, the internal optimist, informed the new appointee, Paul Fitzpatrick, not to get too comfortable in that chair, since those damn Liberals would be out on their ass after the next election and he would become triumphant again. Now let's talk about Gordy's riches, and I don't mean so. Gordy is rich. He's rich with love. If you've traveled with Gordy and Joan and the family and been in there in the social part of it, you know that his love for Joan is real, his daughters and his grandchildren. A love so rich, it is returned by each and one of them with plenty. But I'm not sure about the son-in-laws. That was never mentioned. Gordy is rich. He's rich in kindness, especially for the charities and people he's assisted throughout the many years, as the auctioneer and as he is tonight. And Gordy is rich. He's rich in friendship. If you are a friend of Gordy's, you are a friend for life, and he will always look after you. And as I finish off, I hope that tomorrow I'll still be a friend of Gordy's. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight and supporting such cause, and to Erica and Kendall for neglecting their homework tonight. Remember, there's not many nights like this, girls, that you can do this. Actually, you know, they introduced me as Gord, but if you want to really hear the rest of the story, I'm Paul Harvey. So I could keep you here for hours reputing some of the things that these people said, you know, and I don't believe it all, and I hope you did. I've been in business now in Thunder Bay for over 50 years, and I know 99% of the people that are here tonight, and I really appreciate that you came out and supported the Easter Seal, and I really feel like you're supporting me. And thank you very much for coming.